And and say hello and ask the key things you might be looking for from today's session. Then we can make sure we're exactly on point and can answer all questions. Anyone like to hop in and say hello?
Don't be shy. We're here to help. As we always say.
All right, everyone's very silent. Let's hello, Elena, if you're happy to say hello.
Hi, hello, Anthony.
All right,
happy
right.
to say hello.
All right, so
sorry, I have bad coverage, so I'll keep my camera off.
That's okay. So do you want to tell us very quickly what stage you're at and what things you're looking at you'd love to learn about today?
Sure. So we're a very early stage startup. We incorporated in May this year. We have just finished 2 accelerator programs and received some grant funding. So yeah, we're really looking to see what other options we have going forward, and just kind of explore the space to see what we should be looking for in the next kind of 6 to 12 months.
Okay. And which company is it and what do you do?
Yes, so our name is Dama Health, and we are we're a digital health and biotech company. We're developing a genetic panel that will help identify risks and side effects to be able to match women to forms of contraception. So we're really trying to personalize the journey and essentially, yes, help to personalize what contraception is best for a woman by identifying those medical risk factors.
Okay, and is that something that needs FDA approval and is going to take years of trials, or is it something you can get to market quickly? Where I'm going with this is some businesses are hugely capital intensive and some of them can be revenue generating quite quickly.
Yeah, so we have two aspects of the business. We have our digital kind of matching tool, which that can go into market quite quickly. And then we have our heavily R&D side, which is the genetic development, which will be a different story in terms of capital. But yeah.
All right, so I'll keep that, I hope I'll keep that use case in mind because it's quite fascinating. And all right, cool.
Brilliant,
so, Neal,
thank you.
Sure, thanks for the info. Neal, back to you.
Thanks, Anthony. I'll do my normal bit then. And we're recording this, so everybody, anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Neal Davies. I'm the founder of Exponential Events, and we've just launched the Exponential Club, which we'll cover later on today, which is designed at putting together our contacts over the last 4 years of holding capital raising events in the city into a dedicated members forum, potentials to raise capital, introductions to people who are looking to raise, and also potential investors, which we, as I say, Anthony knows as well, we've been doing since 2017. Oh, there's Dan. So we'll cover that later. As I say, we'll post this video on our YouTube channel later, and we'll send links out to everybody. So if you have to go, and I know a couple of people have sent me messages saying they're going to come, but they've got to shoot off. So that's fine. That's not a problem at all. And we're sure you'll find this very beneficial, as everybody always says. We are actually on the event side. We're back to normal. Well, I say back to normal. We're holding networking brunches in the city. We held our second one last Friday. We had 25 people come. A number of VC companies, PE companies, a number of founders, city lawyers, accountants, and high net worth individuals, which, again, people are going to ask me later, how do you raise capital? Get out there and network, tell your story, and make sure you're in a position to raise capital, and Anthony's going to cover that. So without any further ado, I'll just let these people in. That gives me a break. I'll stop my video. I'll stop my share. And as I say, for anybody who doesn't know Anthony, the CEO and founder of SeegLegals, here's your chance to meet him and build your business. Thank you very much. Over to you, sir.
All right. Hello. So I'm Anthony. And at SeegLegals, we're now actually we've sort of doubled in size over the last year. We're more than 100 people. About 1 in 6 of all early stage funding rounds, option schemes in the UK is now on SeegLegals. I'm not here to promote SeegLegals. I'm here to tell you the things to do to get investment ready, close your next round, and build your business. Just some Zoom things, by the way. If you want, there's a little icon at the top right of the screen, the view icon. You can go full screen for the speaker instead of a grid view. And when I do screen sharing, you can drag the slider across to get bigger Anthony and smaller screen, or vice versa. So what I would like to do is now go through the phases from like right from the beginning of incorporation through to getting your team together, through to your first funding round, valuations, agile fundraising. So without further ado, let me turn on screen sharing, which will be the anchor for going through the various items. So thing number 1, get your cap table right. So when you incorporate your company, sometimes we see on SeegLegals, well, 95% of the time, people just incorporate with 100 ordinary shares split between the co-founders, which investors love. And just occasionally, somebody comes up with something crazy. We call them alphabet shares, A shares, B shares, C shares, and trying to give the founders more voting rights, or each founder gets different share classes. Literally 100% of the time we see companies do this, it needs to get undone later because investors really hate it. And so my suggestion is when you incorporate your company, or of course, most people, I guess, have already incorporated, keep it simple, because when you go to investors, and this will be a standard pattern, investors see many, many companies. And if they see your company like others in terms of its cap table, everyone gets ordinary shares, it's frictionless. But if they see that you're trying to be a Zuckerberg and getting super voting shares and the investors get non-voting shares, it's just extra friction. They're just going to look elsewhere. So cap table, typically you'll do ordinary shares. And then when you get to your funding round, you may do a share split, which you can do on SeegLegals, and it's totally free. So that's thing number 1. So the next thing, you've incorporated, and there are 2 or 3 founders, or 1 founder. Our stats show 2 founders is most typical and gets funded slightly more easily than 1 or 3 founders. And more than 3 founders usually ends up with some founder popping out later, because more than 3 is definitely a crowd. It's not unheard of, but it's normally 2 founders. But what usually happens is you incorporate a couple of founders together, and now you go find yourself typically a CTO later, and you now want to give them some equity. So the questions to figure out, do you give them shares or share options? Should they get shares with votes or no votes? And also, how many shares or options should you give? So let's go through all of that. So the first thing to note is that if the shares have no value, in other words, you've incorporated, you haven't done a funding round yet, you can happily just give shares to people, even employees. But as soon as the shares have a value, if you give shares to a person, they'll have a tax liability potentially. And if it's an employee, the company may also have a tax liability as if it's a deemed benefit. So the rule of thumb is when you have new joiners, right at the beginning, like a new joining CTO, you haven't done a funding round, shares of no value, you can give the person shares. But later on, you should give them share options instead. And there you'll create an option pool and you'll give options, and the options don't have any tax liability until they're exercised later. And we'll get to that in a moment. So now the question is, how many shares or options should you give people? So when you have your CTO joining and they go, I'd like 20%, or they'd like, and you go, well, I think 2%, or maybe it's an advisor that you're hiring and they're asking for 5% equity. Is that a good number or is it a crazy number? And it's really hard to tell, 5%, 1%, Who knows? So here's the trick I use, which is I just try to work out the pound equivalent value. So let's say hypothetically your company's got £1 million valuation, because that's what you're planning for your next or first funding round. So if the person wants 5% equity, or you're offering 5% equity, that's the equivalent of £50,000 in shares or share options. So is £50,000 the right number? Well, here's the way I look at it. So let's say you are finding a CTO, and the CTO could have a market salary of £70,000 a year. But you don't have £70,000. So if you are paying them zero, then you might think that maybe it's a year till your first funding round, and then they can get paid market salary. Then I think you would give them maybe £50,000 worth of shares instead of salary. So here you can see it's the £50,000 is 5%. It all works out. Maybe with an advisor, the advisor is saying, I'd like 5% equity. And you would go, well, hang on a second. That would be the equivalent of £50,000. And let's say it will be vesting over 2 years. £25,000 a year. Well, I can kind of get a junior person in the team for that full time, as opposed to you breezing in 1 day a month. So that seems excessive. Why don't we say it's £5,000 for 1 day a month, vesting over 2 years? So it will be £10,000 equivalent that we will give you. So that is 1% or maybe 2% equity. So anyway, by working out a pound value, then it makes sense. And by the way, if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat. I tend to be looking at the camera and not the chat, but maybe Neal will pop in and tell me when there's something in the chat. All right. So we've worked out you can give shares to people if they're early joiners and share options later. So the next thing is, when you give share options, what are options and what is an option pool? Well, when you give shares to people, every time you allocate more shares, you have to do a filing with Companies House to allocate the shares, and it dilutes all the existing shareholders. And every time you do that, you need permission from them to dilute them. And it's a bit of a schlep. There's admin overhead. So what you can do is you can get permission up front to say, I can give people share options from the options pool without needing any permissions later. And to do that, you create this option pool, you get permission up front, and now every time you hire someone, you can give them some options and you don't need to ask everyone's permission each time. And there are no tax liabilities until they exercise their options later. And you can do an EMI option scheme for employees that's tax beneficial. So anytime you've got employees, the secret formula is, number one, in their employment agreement, you promise them share options, so they're happy and incentivized. Number two, as part of your next funding round, you create an option pool, and that's just one click when you do your funding round on SeegLegals. And number three, typically after the round, but you can do it anytime, you'll create what's called an EMI option scheme to give tax-efficient options to employees. And that's only for employees. And what's very nice is they only pay a small amount of tax when they exercise, and the company has no tax liability. Okay, so you've now got your team together, and now you go looking for investment. So the first thing you want to think about is advance assurance for SEIS. So in the UK, early stage fundraising is fueled by angel investors looking for their investing, of course, in your wonderful company, but also wanting their SEIS and EIS tax deductions. So SEIS means they can write off or deduct 50% of their investment from this year's tax, and little known fact, they can deduct it or backdate it to last year's separately if they want. So that's a perk you can give them as well. And if they keep the shares for 3 years, they pay no capital gains tax. And if the company goes out of business, they can write off the rest of the investment. And as a result, 80% of first rounds in the UK are really angel investors investing and getting their SEIS tax deductions. And one of the questions investors will have is, how do I know that I'll be able to get qualified for this tax deduction? Or rather, how do I know your company will qualify? And for that, you can get advance assurance. So advance assurance is when you write to HMRC, they ask lots of questions these days. You can do this all efficiently on SeegLegals, and HMRC write back saying, yes, based on the facts, you have your advance assurance. You can tell your investors that unless something changes, they will be able to get their SEIS later. Now, advance assurance isn't legally required. It's just a pattern that's emerged where investors now typically ask for it. And getting your advance assurance is often the difference between an investor going, yep, I'm in, versus call me when you've got your advance assurance. So if you don't do advance assurance, there's no problem. The actual SEIS certificates for the investors come after your funding round when you do your SEIS compliance. And some investors will go, great, I don't need you to spend time and effort on getting advance assurance. I trust that will happen, keep going. But I think the majority will look to see you've got advance assurance. And for that reason, it's kind of like an insurance on your round. Having it up front is likely to get less friction with investors, which is what you want. So we now come to the really interesting point, which is how much should you raise and at what valuation? So let me take you through what I think this is the biggest unknown for all founders. But I think after seeing thousands of rounds on SeegLegals and talking to many founders and seeing many, many pitch decks myself, I think although every idea is different, actually fundraising in the UK is remarkably self-similar, at least in the early stages. And it goes something like this. Step one, founders have an idea. Nobody's going to invest just on a PowerPoint because ideas are cheap and implementation is expensive. So what we see is founders typically spending a median of £26,000 of their own money on the idea themselves to build a prototype or make designs or do user testing or whatever it might be. So step one is the founders will put some money into the business themselves. And when you do your round on SeegLegals, you can recognize that as a founder loan to be repaid typically when the company has cash flow later. Step two, the company might raise £50,000 from friends and family. So these are people you know on super simple deal terms, getting SEIS, and really putting enough money in so that you as the founder, if you're independently wealthy, you can keep funding it yourself. But at some point, you know, your partner is going to notice that quite a lot of money is going to the business each month. Where's that £5,000 a month going? Time to get external funding. And as my business partner reminds me, you can't own more than 100% of your own business. So at some point, it makes sense to not spend your own money and get other people's money. And we'll get to when that right point is in a few moments. Anyway, step two is typically 50K, friends and family. Step three is maybe raising your typical SEIS £150,000, £200,000 round to build a product to get it to launch. And then you might raise £500,000 in a seed round from angel investors and early stage funds once you've got your product live to now get users, get product market fit, scale it, build out the features you really wanted. And that's your typical seed round. And once you've got traffic and you've got revenue, you're now ready for a Series A round where you might raise a few £1,000,000, typically from VCs and funds. And that's all about scaling. And you'll typically go to a VC for a Series A round once you have revenue. And a Series A round is all about throwing money at marketing, advertising, buying pay-per-click ads, buying ads on Facebook, bus shelters, whatever it might be, because you've proven that people want your product. And now it's about getting it out in front of more people. And before that, it's about angel investors taking more of a risk at a lower valuation. Now, I've outlined 4 or 5 stages, but you don't need to go through all of them. You might skip one or more. On SeegLegals, my business partner and I funded it through to essentially a seed round ourselves. So we put quite a lot of money into the business ourselves. And then our first round was raising £1 million. And then we raised 3 million at a Series A. But that's because we had a few exits before and we could fund it a bit ourselves. But your mileage might be different. So now we come to valuations. And here, by the way, you'll find all of this on SeegLegals in resources, deal data. And I think valuations go like this. A couple of founders get together, have a PowerPoint, all right, £300,000 valuation. You've built a prototype, £500,000. You've got something like in the App Store, something that actually people can sign up and use, 800K valuation. You've got some number of users, a little over $1 million valuation. You've got revenue, 10, 20K a month revenue, 2 million valuation. And north of that, you might be a valuation that might be 10x your annual revenues, would be a typical rule of thumb. So we now come to the rather interesting point about how much should you raise at what valuation. And here we note over thousands of rounds a really interesting pattern, which is that companies sell a median of 15% equity in a round. And that means that when you raise, your investors are getting at the end of the round a particular amount of equity. And that then actually leads to particular patterns, which is raising £150,000 SEIS classic round on maybe an £850,000 pre-money valuation, so that at the end of the round, the valuation will be 850 plus 150 is $1 million, and the investors will own 150 out of the million, 15%. Or maybe you'll raise £500,000 at a £2.5 million pre-money valuation, or £2 million at a 10 million valuation. And you can see actually what's happening is that the valuation, if it's 5 times the amount you're raising, the dilution will be 1 in 6, 16%, near enough 15. And so that tends to be the pattern. So here's the challenge that everyone has. So I'm guessing, Elena, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. So you've got your company, and what you've probably now figured is fundraising is difficult. So I don't want to do it too often. So I'm going to sit with Excel and work out all the things I need for the next 18 months. So I'm going to need a couple of developers, and then I'm going to need marketing, and I'm going to need someone on bookkeeping, and of course the 2 founders, and maybe I need an app developer also, or of course in your case, some medical researchers. You put it all together and you're going to get, let's say, 8 people. And 8 people, I'm going to pay them 50K each, and I've got some overhead. So let's say that's 500K, and I need for, let's say, 18 months. So that's going to be 750K. But actually, that would mean if I'm going to dilute by 15%, I now need to raise at maybe almost a £4 million pre-money valuation. And there's the challenge, which is when you go to investors, and you're talking about a valuation north of about £2 million, they're normally looking for the company to have a product that's live and have revenue. Now, if it's medical, if it's capital intensive, if you're building greenhouses, or needing to raise vast amounts for, genetics or something like that, mileage is different. But typically in a SaaS business or an app business, raising it north of $1 million and a bit pre-product is difficult. And so actually what usually happens is you then run the numbers. You have 8 people, I need to raise 500K or 800K. And it turns out that that's trying to be too big a step initially. And instead you now have a take 2, which is an alternate model where maybe you think about 4 people and raising enough with those 4 people to get to the next step, where you can now raise more to get to larger team. And that leads to the rise of what I call agile fundraising. So once upon a time, it went like this. Fundraising is difficult. It takes maybe 3 months to find investors, and then 3 months to do all the deal negotiation and close around. And it's expensive, so I don't want to do it too often. So before I can do it again, I now need to have some traction so that next time it's going to be a larger amount that I can raise at a higher valuation. And maybe I need 6 months of being live to do the development and so on to get that traction. And then I can't risk trading insolvent. So I need maybe 3 months cash in the bank. So that's 15 months. So you have these big 15-month cycles of finding investors, do a funding round, and then doing it all over again. But while you are searching for those investors, that 6 months of putting the funding round together, you can't hire people, you're spending your own money, you can't scale the business. So is there an alternative? And that's agile fundraising. So once upon a time, you'd have to do a funding round, but actually there's now an alternative. And what we see, there are 2 ways to go. Way number 1 is what we call the rolling close round. So let's say that you wanted to raise £300,000, but actually you found £200,000 of investors. You would have a challenge. Do I close a smaller round, or do I wait, hold up my business while I keep looking for more? But actually what you can do is you can do a rolling close round. So you can say, I'm going to raise 200,000 and build into the funding round the conditions and permissions so I can top up another 200K anytime in the next 12 months at the same or higher valuation. And so on SeegLegals, if you do your round, it's literally 1 click. And I would say 75% of all rounds now are rolling close rounds, which is fantastic. Because once you get TechCrunch writing up your funding round, or you get PR, that's when investors come your way. And instead of saying, sorry, round's closed, you can go, yep, I can send you an instant investment to top up my round. But there's another pattern as well, which is that maybe you're looking to raise £200,000, and actually somebody comes along tomorrow and says, maybe it's one of these London startup events that are now back on. Maybe it's at Exponential where you're pitching, and somebody goes after your presentation and goes, I'm in for 20K, what do I do? Well, instead of saying, come back in December when I've got my round, you really need the 20K now so you can get some developers or UX or whatever it might be. And that, the solution is a seed fast. So seed fast is like a convertible note, but a convertible note isn't SEIS or EIS compatible. And we know early stage rounds are fueled by SEIS investment. So a seed fast, that's our SeegLegals brand name for something called an Advanced Subscription Agreement, or ASA. And it says the investor gives you money now, individual investors, and it will convert into shares when you do your next round at a valuation to be determined in the round. And because the person's coming in sooner, you're going to incentivize them by giving them 10 or 20% discount compared to the investors later. And if you don't do a funding round within a certain time, which is limited to 6 months for SEIS reasons, it will convert anyway at a valuation that's called the long stop valuation. Anyway, if you go on SeegLegals, you can read a lot more about seed fasts. They're insanely popular. And I would say now, between the seed fasts ahead of the round and the rolling close round, there's pretty much as much investment raised outside of a round as in the round itself. And that's totally transforming the way that people are doing fundraising. So with that in mind, that was the 101 on really, you can see, although each idea is different, there's very much a pattern to team fundraising valuations. And if you've got any questions, Anthony@SeegLegals.com, connect with me on LinkedIn, although I'm insanely behind on LinkedIn. I'll try and get to it. And now I will go to the chat and
Neal,
Anthony,
sure, there's a few in there. Richard asks, what's the impact of on SEIS if you've had some de minimis grant funding?
Great question. Okay, so for those who aren't aware, de minimis grants are if you get C bills or B bills, or you get some government funding, because SEIS is a state aid. If you've got other state aids, it's deducted from the amount of SEIS. And the rules are a bit complicated, but normally you can offer an investor £150,000 or investors 150K of SEIS. If you've got B bills or C bills of some of the others, you may need to subtract that from the remaining SEIS that you've got available. And with B bills in particular, you only have to subtract it from the SEIS amounts if your business was in distress. If your business wasn't in distress, you don't need to. And with Innovate UK grants or some of the others, they are. Anyway, drop us a note at SeegLegals because circumstances vary, and it's important to get it right, because if it turns out that you raise 150K from investors and promise them SEIS, and then when it comes to do your SEIS compliance, and now you discover or remember or HMRC note that you've gotten grant funding, that needs to get subtracted from the amount you can offer as SEIS. And now you've got a difficult conversation with investors going, sorry, dude, I can't give you SEIS. I can give you EIS instead, where there's no such limit. And they get 30% deduction instead of 15. So you want to get the numbers right first, but yes, some of it gets deducted. Next question, Neal.
Okay, hi. This is from Kristen. When taking a convertible note approach, it appears SEIS only valued on those notes to convert within 6 months, which I think you just covered. I plan on doing a raise 12 months after the pre-seed with convertible notes. Is there still a way for investors to invest with convertible notes and take advantage of SEIS?
That is a great question. So the answer is yes, but you're going to have to convert them before the round. So when you do a seed fast, don't call it a convertible note, because those carry interest and return of capital and won't qualify for SEIS. So be careful. Always talk about an advanced subscription agreement, ASA or seed fast, lest anything trickle through to HMRC with the word convertible note in it, and then they'll go, no SEIS. But when you do a seed fast, for example, it has to convert within 6 months for SEIS purposes. But that's not necessarily a problem, because you can still say, if I do a funding round in 6 months, it will convert at the valuation in the funding round. If I don't, it will convert at a 2 million valuation. And that means it really needs to convert, but you're agreeing a valuation up front. So long as you're happy to agree the valuation, if you don't do the round in time, it will convert, and you just give the investor shares, which we've called that instant conversion for that use case. So it works fine, so long as you think about what the numbers will be up front, rather than going, oh, I didn't do my round, disaster, it needs to convert. So you can have it as a planned conversion. Next question, Neal.
Right, this is from Rav. Hi, Rav. Good to see you, and at our event last week. Question for Anthony. You just mentioned the 500 grand seed round as the next stage. How much equity to give away in that seed stage, given the amounts you said you raised in the pre-seed? Thanks.
Right. So generally our data, and my suggestion is, aim for 15% dilution in each round. And here's the way I look at it. And I don't know if I'm trying to retrofit life based on the facts or the facts based on life, but basically my take is, in your startup, your goal is to raise 3 funding rounds such that at the end of the 3rd round, you either are profitable and don't need to raise again, or you're good for an exit. And if you do 3 rounds, each time at 3 to 5 times the valuation of the last round, and each time raising 3 to 5 times the amount of the last round, and you dilute by 15% each time, and you create a 10% option pool for your team, at the end of the third round, the founders still have more than 50% of the shares. You're still majority shareholders. So that's good. If it turns out that you are diluting by 25% each round, after 3 rounds, the founders are minority shareholders in their own business, which has got 2 problems. One, just on a vote, the investors might be able to start controlling the direction of the business, or forcing an exit, or forcing you out. Secondly, if the founders have got too little equity too soon, investors start seeing the business as less investable, because they see founders, you might find you've got 3 founders. If between you, you've got 40% equity, that's 13% per founder. It starts looking less attractive for investors, because they see founders have little skin in the game potentially. So again, I like to keep in mind this, the journey, which is hard to see at the beginning, but once you've seen many of them, it's easy to visualize. Maybe 3 funding rounds, each one, think about the sort of ripples in the pond, it gets bigger. And then at the end of the 3rd round, good for an exit, or don't need to raise again, and you're still majority shareholders. So that's 15% per round. It's not a disaster if you end up with an investor demanding 20%, or even sometimes a bit more, but that's a good rule of thumb to aim for. All right.
Thanks, Anthony. Rav says, we've used SeegLegals for all of our investments, including overseas ones. So there's obviously
I'm delighted, and I'm sure
a lovely comment from Rav. A question from Tim, and then we'll move on. We've just received an Innovate UK grant. This requires match funding by Angel Equity Invest. Will the 150 angel investments still be okay for SEIS? And what is the best to accelerate the funding round?
So 2 questions. I don't know offhand the answer whether the Innovate grant will affect SEIS. I suspect in that case it won't. But if you drop me a note, anthony@seeglegals.com, I'll have my expert team look at that particular one and tell you that. But in terms of will it affect your fundraising, the answer is it will, in a good way, because the challenge investors have is they don't want to be the only person in the round. They want to see that others are investing as well. Their fear might be that you've told them you need £300,000 to get to the next step, and they've come along and they said, I'm in, and like there's nobody else in the party. So if you've already got 100K in grant money, that's fantastic. It's non-dilutive capital. It indicates that you're a winner with Innovate UK. So that's a big tick. They've selected you out of thousands. And you've got some capital already. So you want to really leverage that with the investors. It's not part of your round because it's grant money, but you can show that of your plan to raise a certain amount, it's almost as if you've raised that already. And then, of course, you're going to do the check that it doesn't affect their SEIS.
Right, we'll do one more, which has come through. I've posted your email on the site as well.
Fantastic,
on the chat.
Thank you.
This is from Ed. He says, hi, thanks for a great presentation. How do investors feel about co-founders represented as a LLC company, in brackets 50% CEO as a person and 50% CMO represented by his company?
Very good question, and quite a technical one. So the short answer is investors don't like it, and they don't like it for a few reasons, probably 3 reasons. The first fuzzy reason, I think investors like a standard pattern, which is the founders are part of the company. And anytime they see their holding companies, investors see it as the founders trying to do something a bit weird to take advantage of the investors or tax or something, which is a bit of a negative. But that aside, there are 2 actual issues. One of them is investors always expect founders to have shares that vest. If the founder leaves, some of the shares have to go back to the company, which can then go to other people in the future. And that's vitally important. But when the shares are held in a holding company, it's hard to enforce vesting. The shares aren't held by the founder. What if the founder leaves? What if the founder sells the holding company to somebody else? So it creates all of these complexities, and investors don't like it. And therefore, it just adds more friction. And the other thing is that if a company can only offer SEIS to its investors if it's the top company, but if it's got its shareholders or other companies for more than, I think, 20 or 30%, then it stops becoming a top co and starts looking like a subsidiary. And then that won't qualify for SEIS. So if it may be okay that one founder with 10% has it through a company, it will add some friction to your round. But if it turns out that the founders collectively have more than 30% of the equity in the business in holding companies, that means your company can't offer SEIS, or you've got complicated, slightly gray area workarounds, and then it becomes a lot of friction. And we see often, by the way, also, I know that typically in Australia, it's standard that founders will have shares with holding companies for some weird reason. That's not the case in the UK. So whenever I see a holding company, I just know it's an Aussie founder. I mean, you've said an LLC, so there's a US. But typically, there's either friction or it has to get unwound, and the founders end up with their shares directly in most cases. So again, there'll be overhead, but hit me up with the exact details and how best to address that. All right, so I'll hand over to others, and I'll answer in the chat some of the questions that I see that I can still answer in the chat.
That's great. Anthony, again, thank you very much for your time. I'll put your email in there, so people please contact Anthony, and if he can't help, he'll put you in touch with one of his team who can. Right, we'll move on. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Neal.
Yeah, hi, nice to see you. Ladies and gentlemen, as I say, we've been doing these events for a long, long time, and my background's not events, it's private equity and such like. And a number of our investors, including PE, VC funds and everything else, will only actually look at companies that got some sort of IP protection, whether it be patents, trademarks and such like. Forresters is our IP trademark attorney partner, been with us, to say, for a long time. And I'd like to introduce you to Dan Rusby Gale from Forresters, who will explain what they do, how you can benefit as a startup from a free 30-minute consultation, and why such trademarks and protection and patents are important to investors. So over to you, Dan. I will cut my screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Neal. Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's Dan Rusby Gale from Forresters. I'm going to be talking to you about how to protect your IP. And you've just heard some great advice from Anthony on how to raise capital. And you're probably thinking, why should I spend this capital on protecting my IP? But when someone comes to me with that question, I put it back to them and say, would you be happy in a few years' time, or would your business survive in a few years' time if somebody comes along and just copies what you're doing and steals your IP? So yeah, I've got a few slides. There's quite a lot in there. So I'll put my email in the chat box. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask them there. And I've added some slides to this presentation, which actually give some tips on how to get some extra funding to help you protect your IP. So hopefully that will be helpful. I will share my screen now. Okay, hopefully you can see my slides. So moving on. Yeah, I'll be talking about the three main forms of IP today: patents, trademarks, and registered designs. There are some other rights listed there, which I'm not going to cover. They're quite specific. And let's look at some case studies. give these IP rights some context, starting with trademarks. So yeah, a trademark protects your brand, your company name, your product name, any slogans that you use, logos, graphics, that kind of thing. And yeah, this is critical to protect your brand, i.e. the names that you trade under and your reputation. And if you're an early stage startup, you're probably thinking, what should I call my company? What should I call my products? And my advice would be to choose a name which is distinctive, i.e. it's different, it stands out, and that it's not descriptive of the goods or services that you're delivering. So for instance, if you're making ice cream, it wouldn't be a good idea to choose cold and creamy for the name of your business, because you're going to have real difficulty in registering that descriptive trademark. And it's also a good idea to do a bit of searching, because if you settle on a name and then you go ahead and try and register your name as a trademark, what happens is a phonetic search is carried out, and you will get other right owners coming to you going, hold on a second, the name you've chosen sounds a bit like what I'm doing, and you enter into a bit of legal to and fro with this other entity. It causes complications, and that equates to expense. So yeah, do a search first of all to make sure you're clearing the path and you're not going to tread on someone else's toes with their brand. The good thing about trademark protection is it lasts indefinitely, provided you pay renewal fees, usually every 10 years. And there's a couple of examples there, obviously McDonald's and the registered trademark symbol. Moving on to registered designs. So a registered design can protect the appearance of the whole or part of a product. It's pretty easy and relatively cheap to obtain registered design protection. The requirements are simply that the design must be novel, i.e. a new design, and it must have individual character in the sense that it creates a different overall impression. These are pretty low bars to meet. And yeah, you can register your product and get protection for the look of the product for up to 25 years if you pay your renewal fees every 5 years. Here are a few examples of what can be registered. A few more examples here. Yeah, you can register computer icons, graphical user interfaces, that kind of thing. So it's pretty wide ranging. Now moving on to patent protection. So in the UK and Europe, in most countries, there's a first to file system. So what I mean by that is if you're the first to file your patent application, you get the right to seek patent protection for the invention. And it's critical that you file your patent application before you disclose the invention to the public. Once the invention is out there, you then can't obtain valid patent protection in the UK and Europe at least. In the States, there's a 12-month grace period, but yeah, to be on the safe side, keep your invention confidential. Don't disclose it to anyone until you've filed your application. And a patent, it's really it's your deal with the government in return for telling everybody what you're doing in your patent application when it's published. You can obtain up to 20 years monopoly to stop others from using your invention. So that's the trade-off. You disclose in return for getting protection. The requirements for patentability, these are much higher than registered design for registered designs. The invention must be novel in the sense that it's new, and inventive in the sense that it's not an obvious combination of what's gone before. And the invention also mustn't be excluded from patentability. And there's a whole list of exclusions such as medical treatments, business methods, mathematical methods, that kind of thing. So the procedure runs like this. We would file an initial priority application to get your filing date. and this is usually, I would usually recommend filing in the UK first, because it's relatively cheap and you get a high quality search report back quickly within 3 or 4 months. Then if the search report comes back, this will give you an indication of whether you're likely to get a patent and what the scope of protection might be. So assuming that comes back clear and it's looking good, you could then file an international or PCT patent application within 12 months of your first filing. And this will effectively keep the door open for you to apply for patent applications in almost all countries around the world. And so the international application will effectively be backdated to your initial first filing date. So it keeps the rights pending. You can put patent pending on your products and literature. And also importantly, it allows more time to raise funds to pay for the national phase patent applications, which need to be filed at the end of the international phase. So that's the tried and tested route for startups that I would recommend. So here's a real life example. We've got an iPhone here, lots of IP rights, trademarks, obviously in Apple and iPhone. The technical features and functionality of the phone is protected by hundreds of patents. And the appearance will be protected by registered designs. The software itself, the code, is protected by copyright. Incidentally, in the UK and Europe, there's nothing, you don't need to do anything to register your copyright. It subsists automatically in original works when they're created. And Apple will hold back some trade secrets, which they don't want to disclose. That they won't have protection over here for those trade secrets, but generally things are kept as trade secrets if they can't be reverse engineered. So some heavy AI systems might have some AI going on a server somewhere which can't be reverse engineered. So many businesses might choose to not file patent applications for that technology because nobody knows what they're doing and they have no way of knowing. So yeah, why disclose it in a patent application? So what do your investors want to see? First of all, are you going to get sued by someone else who already has IP protection in place? And you can investigate this by doing a freedom to operate assessment, look at your competitors and look at their IP portfolios, see what they're doing. Secondly, have you protected what you're doing and how have you protected it? Have you got an IP strategy in place where you identify the IP in your business, work out what filings you're going to do, patents, trademarks, registered designs, and put together a pipeline for getting your technology protected? And last of all, patent box. This is a scheme set up by the UK government, and it allows you to reduce your corporation tax payments when you eventually get around to paying those down to 10%. And this is on all profits made from a patented invention, and it's worldwide profits. So it could be a significant tax saving. I believe the corporation tax is 19% at the moment. I believe in 2023 that's going up to 23%, I think. And yeah, so significant savings here. I'm not a tax advisor, as you can tell, so I can't advise you on that, but I can help you with getting a patent to take advantage of this tax saving. Okay, and next is this IP access scheme. Now, this is a very new scheme which has just been launched in the UK, and it provides funding of up to £5,000 to SMEs to help them protect and commercialize their IP. And there's a list of things here that you can use this funding for. It's all related to IP. And the scheme is available to SMEs, provided the SME has fewer than 250 employees, and a turnover of not more than £41 million. So that's the first criteria. The second criteria is the SME must have been awarded part funding for an IP audit between April 2020 and March 2022. So there's time to take advantage of this. How do you apply? So first of all, you apply for funding for an IP audit via the UK Patent Office, the UK IPO, via one of their IP audit partners. And I've listed a few here: Innovate UK, Edge, Scottish Enterprise, and the Welsh Government. So you apply, and it's handled by the UK IPO. And the IP audit can cover identifying what IP is owned by your business, and guidance relating to the strategy for protecting that IP, new opportunities, and so on. And the value of the IP audit, the funding, £3,000, including VAT, and the UK Patent Office will contribute £2,500 of that. The remaining £500 is payable by the business once the audit has been completed. So yeah, any qualified UK IP professional can carry out the audit, and we at Forresters have done this a few times for our clients, so we can assist you with this. So Forresters, we're offering free 30-minute consultations by person or by video at the moment. And we can, as I was mentioning, do an IP audit for you, identify the IP in your business, refine your IP strategy, and put together a roadmap. We can also look at the IP section of any pitch documents that you might be putting together. And we can put together fixed price quotes for filing IP rights, and we can also look at your competitors and map out the landscape, carry out freedom to operate. And sorry, more of a sales pitch here. We've got a wide-ranging team from the life sciences trademark team. I'm on the technology and engineering side, handling a lot of software applications and electronics. And finally, I'll just end with this. This is a bit of a success story. We had a client come to us who developed this tool in his garden shed, and it's for marking out holes on a wall behind something that you're trying to put up on the wall, and it's to mark out positions for drilling into the wall. So he developed this product called the Marksman marking tool. We did a background search to see whether the invention might be patentable. We then drafted and filed a UK patent application that went to grant. We went down the international or PCT patent application route and obtained patent protection in the key countries where he needed protection. We registered Marksman as a trademark, and we also helped him go on Dragon's Den and we did a mock Dragon's Den in our office and helped him with his paperwork. And it was a great result. All of the 5 dragons offered to invest, and now you can buy this product in most DIY stores across the UK. So thank you very much. I realise that was quite a rush through everything. So if you've got any questions, do put them in the box. And like I said, I'll put my email address in there. I'll stop sharing my screen. And
hi, Dan, that's great. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Does anybody have any? What we'll do is we'll move on. Anybody's got any questions for Dan? Dan's going to put his email in there. Again, I would advise any companies in the field of needing IP and such like to take advantage of the free offer. You can't go wrong. And as I say, as far as investors look at, there are a number of investors who would just look at companies that have some sort of trademark or patent in whatever field it might be going forward. There are indeed actually funds that just concentrate on that. Now what we're going to do is going to introduce Dan Ballin to you. Dan's a very good friend. we've been working together for a number of years. And to all you out there, I suppose, I don't really want to talk at you. The question I always get asked, and I'm sure Dan does as well, is how do I actually meet investors? You know, how do I start off? How do I get on that ladder to meet angels, people look at VCs, PE companies, etc. So we'll cover a bit of that. So anybody got any questions, please fire up now. Dan's put his email in there. Anybody want to sort of feel free to open up the video and say what they're up to, and we will explain what we do, how you can meet investors, how you can raise capital. Anybody doesn't want to be too shy?
So whilst we're waiting for people to get their confidence up, Neal, probably worth saying on Dan, too many Dans here, previous Dan from Forresters, I'm now just Ideas Crucible. We help companies secure funding and scale and get them investment ready. And I'm just started work with an energy startup, building a sustainable new kind of fuel, using and a new engine as well that can process it, spin out from a university. And they've gone through the journey of actually acquiring or creating over 100 patents, and their whole business model is on licensing this technology. And we're focusing just on venture capital firms which work within this licensing space as well. So the value of the IP cannot be underrated. I went through the journey of getting 14 of the things myself. So, so if you're interested, speak with Forresters after the call.
Tim, I think you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just willing to volunteer my my story for you to answer questions on. If that's okay.
Yeah, I mean we're here to help. This is a learning workshop, and as I say, everybody feel free to join. Yeah, so we've just received notification that we've been successful in an Innovate grant, which needs match funding by angel investors. We've got a couple of angel investors that are interested, and we're now rather quickly need to get other angel investors to close the round of funding. So we've been out to one angel group, and that's where we got a couple of people. And so it's now, well, we need to kind of move quickly and get to more angel groups. But we're conscious of time, and I know a lot of the angel groups take a long time to get you to sign up and go through the process and stuff like that. So is there a quicker way? Is there a fast way? What's the best way to kind of get to as many angel investors as we can and tell our story? And obviously the Innovate grant's going to help hugely. So yeah, speed is the question. I think just so before Dan comes in, to answer your question, obviously it's been very difficult over the last couple of years. We held, and we have now restarted holding networking and physical pitching events or relaxed pitching events. So the key is, I suppose, from my point of view, get out to our events, meet some people, join our club. There's a basic membership which is free, which at the moment gives you full access to the whole site. On there, we are trying to, well, we're trying, what we are doing is putting together my contacts over the last however many years, too many, and investors that we've had to our London events over the last, well, in 2019, we had 2,000 people, investors, attend our events. So we're back, we're doing that. We're building a community for startups, companies, investors, people who are looking to network and such like. So, join the Exponential Club, which is www.theexponential.club. It's free to join as a basic member. Come to we're doing a networking brunch in the city on the first Friday of every month. Say last month we had 25 people, might not sound a lot. We used to fill a room of 100, but it takes time to get back. But we had, I think, 3 VC funds, a couple of PE funds, number of professional investors in the city and such like. So, it's get out to those events. We're still doing virtual pitches, so you're welcome to contact me later. We've got one on I think it's the end of the month. I'm not sure the day. Sorry, I'll find it. But
26, was it? 27?
20. Sorry, yeah, 20. I think it's 26th of October. We've got a virtual pitch event. All those are on our site, as I say. So it's a question of
26.
Getting out. Putting out as far as early stage or a startup fundraising goes, a teaser. I had one yesterday for a medical company. I said, yep, looks interesting. It's a chemotherapy, an alternative chemotherapy deal. So the first thing I said is send me a pitch deck because I'm interested in the one-page teaser. So they've already sent that to me because we invest as well, but that's a separate entity. So it is a slow process, or can be a slow process, and take advantage of other companies doing events. There's a few out there, so I'm not saying just use us, but at the end of the day, and I think Dan will agree, it's about meeting people. The great thing about physical events rather than virtual, although virtual has its advantages on the basis we can put investors together across the world who don't actually physically have to attend an event, but the actual physical ones is that, you know, I can go, oh, Tim, meet so-and-so because I know he's interested in that field. Yeah. And then you can talk to him or her. Yeah. That's what we've done. That's what we're doing. And that's what the club is focused on doing as well. So I hope that helps.
Thank you very much.
Tim, where are you based?
So I'm in Leeds, but my co-founder's in Ascot. So we're kind of north and south.
Okay. And what do you do, Tim?
So our business is called BioStress Lab, and we improve the management of workplace stress. So using biometric devices, we objectively measure workplace stress. We've just done a trial with a large healthcare organization to understand stress in their contact center and then combine that objective measure of stress, so the first objective measure of stress there is, with their objective productivity to understand how stress actually correlates to productivity. So we need to essentially build the automation. So we have a product, we've trialed it, we've rolled it out to Bupa, and we now need to scale it. So it's a case of we need to build stuff, get the tech developers in to build it, so that we can then scale it within organizations like Bupa and other organizations.
So first thing I would say, Tim, as a Yorkshire lad myself, send me a pitch deck over. My details are in the chat. We kind of, I would say, focus on medtech, or we got a lot of recommendations on the back of some work many years ago, and now we seem to all we get is, I'd say, medtech and deep tech is everyone thinks is our thing. We do all sorts of things though, but we've got a lot of experience, is what I'm saying, in this space. Hence why we've just brought a medical director of operations on board. And the other area is also hardware, so equally that'd be quite interested as well. There's no magic way to shortcut the length of time, really, at the end of the day when it comes to securing investment. Everyone, or nearly everyone, wants to do it fast. Now, I mean, one of the ways is where you've already gone down in some way, which is you've managed to secure match funding, which makes it a far more attractive proposition to some at the end of the day. But as Anthony, who's just spoken, will say on SeegLegals, the way he's got the data because he's collecting it, the average fund round is about, from launch to finish, is about 5 months. You've got to bear in mind that it's not just about you getting out there doing launching the product. It's then they've got the people want to do their due diligence, and then you've got even if they still like you, they've got to close it, and that requires people and time, even if they love you in the beginning. I think Neal and I would actually say that investment rounds on the whole take take longer and close to 9 months. So, so actually, if you do it within 5 months, in my view, that's quite good. The longer the round, often they show it's a lot of people. The ones that don't shortcut the rounds are ones that have planned out their investment strategy for pre-seed, seed, and Series A. So I get some really promising startups saying, Dan, we're looking for you to help me secure funding. we'll be popping something in the diary in November 22 because we've just secured our other round. And so they're thinking it through and how much they're going to be looking at each stage and the level of dilution. So I know, but this isn't a perfect world, so I can't.
No.
So.
I'd also say that, you know, that again, be very, I'm not saying very careful, it's probably a word. Don't necessarily jump at investors for the sake of jumping at investors. This is advice to everybody. What they're looking at doing, where they're coming in. A lot of early stage startups look at VC companies. Unless you're up to sort of justifying a £2-3 million valuation, you're going to waste so much time going through that circle. And at the same time, they're going to say rape and pillage you, for want of a better word. And you're better off, more often than not, walking away from it. Yeah. So come back to what Dan and Anthony was saying earlier on the raises. You know, 26 grand your own cash, family and friends, 50 grand. Then you go out into the market, SEIS, EIS, or first bit, 150 grand, whether it be through a seed fast subscription note or a rolling close scenario. And I think that's important to understand for all early stage companies, is that, you know, and again, the legals, so you don't get screwed later on down the line when they come in and go, okay, I've got 10% of the company, I want it non-diluted, I want it this, I want it that. We're here to help, advice, wise, everything else. Say, as far as actually raising, that's what we do. We put early stage companies in front of potential investors. Recently, obviously, for the last couple of years, we've been doing it virtually. Prior to that, in the City of London, we were doing it, you know, a couple of times a month with 100 people in a club next to the Bank of England. We've raised money for a number of startups. I had a classic, without boring you, we held an event at the old Brand Exchange in London. I had an IFA who I knew, who brought along an ex-Goldman Sachs investor, one of the companies presenting. I went to lunch with my IFA mate in a club in London the following day. Who should be there but the CEO of this startup with this Goldman Sachs guy, and he became the founding investor. And that's what it's all about. It's about meeting people. That's what we do. So I say, encourage you all to join the club. As a basic member, it's free, and you'll get access to everybody. So you can go on and search, you know, investors, companies raising, and contact them. Anybody else got any questions? I mean, Dan, do you want to?
Is this your first round, by the way?
Yeah, first round. So it's also qualifies for SEIS.
Perfect.
So how much are you raising in?
150.
Yeah.
Right. And how much you got? And you've already got how much? 75.
So we've got firm commitments are about 70. Well, okay. Some soft commitments in that actually, but yeah, about 70. So we're looking for anything between 70, anything between 80, and depending on one investor, it might be.
It's a good size round to start with. The one thing, if you're building something actual tangible, I will say is, and particularly if you're looking at 150, is you might want to consider whether you want to try something like a crowdfund as well, whether you're dealing with something tangible like a Kickstarter or something, particularly if it's something people can relate to, you know, and mental health is very in at the moment as well. So if you I don't know how your product's working, like resistivity or heart rate, or whatever it may be, but it's a very popular area at the moment. So something like that might be more appealing. But you're doing the friends and family stage as well. They're always more forgiving as investors, and you'd be surprised how many will say yes. Friends, families, and fools, as they're known as. But you know, if you're only doing 70K, I would consider, and I would consider that, particularly if you've got some early traction. And that's something like Booper is something I'd really bring out as well, because it's a big.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So yeah, okay. If you drop me a note, we can have a chat.
Cool. I'll drop you an email. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else want to buzz into the conversation? Say we're here to help. Everybody's shy again. Hi.
Mario.
Hello.
Mario.
Hi guys. Just
Hi.
to say thanks, and I'm very happy because I was one of the first customer of SeegLegals, so it's I'm very happy that Anthony created these big things now. And so just to share my pleasure to be a testimonial from the first period of that.
That's great. Well, thanks very much. We appreciate that. As I say, we've been working with Anthony and Dan for a number of years, and obviously very successfully. Everybody thinks our events are great, which is good. And we want to help everybody as much as we can.
The number of connections that were created at the event of the week was fantastic. Actually, though it was only about, well, it was about 25 to 30, it meant we could all get around the room. It was a rich bunch, actually, of startups, investors, and those in the ecosystem. And I certainly came out with some business, and I think we can help raise for at least 3 or 4 of those startups.
No, that's great. I mean, people look at numbers when they want to pitch. This is another interesting thing. You don't need to be pitching to 100 people. You need to pitch into 5 or 6 or 10 of the right people. And again, that's what a lot of startups, you know, we can hold an event and fill a room with 100 people, but that doesn't help you. Yeah, the whole idea with the club now is we can direct you. So if you're raising in a fintech or medtech or whatever it is, I can say to you, Tim or whoever it might be, have a chat with so-and-so. Yeah. That's where you need to be. And again, it saves you time on the capital raising journey, because it is a job. Capital raising in itself, let alone founding a company, is a job. So the easier anybody can make it for you, I would, you know, empower you to say, right, you know, talk to Neal, talk to Dan, talk to Anthony, talk to Dan, Rusby at Forresters. Get everything right.
Raising funding is one of the 4 Ds of distraction, dilution, discipline, and delusion. So when it comes to something, so you've got to think, is equity right for you? Anthony gave you a good reason why equity possibly is right for you. But the best form of way to raise funding is through, wherever possible, profitable customers at the end of the day. They don't dilute your share so much, and certainly could be a lot quicker. So, and the amount of distraction in terms of both time and risk that you're increasing into your company is extremely high. At the end of the day, wherever possible, you want to be focusing on product development and sales and marketing at the end of the day. And discipline is often underestimated, because you're going to be having investors snapping at your heels forevermore, particularly less so on the friends and families, more so as it goes up to angels, syndicates, and VCs and into the world of PE at the end of the day. You've got board meetings, you've got to start managing your accounts a lot tighter. You've got a greater focus earlier on what your exit strategy is at the end of the day. And Anthony spoke on dilution quite well. And the other D is why delusion. You've got a whole new management team that will be coming on board as soon as you start raising investment as well. Growth managers at the end of the day, possibly people who are going to start managing your investor panel, looking at your strategy will change, and the kind of people you're dealing with will change. But best of luck, and if you need any help, Neal and I can help.
Yeah. So what we'll do, we've recorded this. Sorry.
Hi, Neal. Sorry.
Hi.
I mean, hi. I know most of them are quiet, and I would like to actually ask a few questions, if that is okay.
Okay. Yeah, of course you can.
Great. Let me start my video as well to show my face. How brilliant. Thanks, Neal and Dan. You know, I think this session has been really useful. And so I'm Raj. I'm the founder of a startup company called Reach. We are based in south of London, and currently I'm developing a solution for a next generation booking system where customers can actually search anything and book instantly. This is what we are trying to solve with Reach. I know that there are platforms which is out there focusing on individual industry group, but at Reach, we are trying to create a platform, something like Amazon for services, where customers can search whatever they are looking for and be able to book it instantly. That's what we are trying to do.
What kind of booking, Raj? Anything in particular?
So any services, basically personal, pet, home services, could be academic coachings like English tuition, any subject-specific tuitions or language-specific tuitions, or even sports coaching like tennis, karate, whatever it is. So the platform has actually looked at multiple industry. To put it into perspective, we researched about 50 different industries and built this platform, considering what are all the different needs required for individual industry and put into a single platform. So hope you guys actually understand the concept behind this. It's a single platform through which a business in multiple industry can actually list their service and products and be able to offer it to customers. Yep. That's what we are trying to do.
That sounds good. Raj, sorry, but this, sorry to cut you there.
Sorry, Neil, yeah.
Yeah, we're happy to talk and everything else, but we don't need a...
Was there anything specific you were after help here, Raj?
I'm after 2 questions, by the way.
Right.
I just want to give a background about
me that's and the okay, company.
But good context, right?
Yeah.
Please, the questions.
Okay, the first question is, it's a solo founder company, and I have been bootstrapping with my personal funds. And I have friends and family, a small investment of friends and family. So far, I have built the platform using freelancers in India, and I probably have raised about 55,000 to build this platform. Okay, and I have with the current outgoing cash flow, I have a runway of say 4 months. Now I'm looking for a co-founder. I'm basically from technology. I've been a software architect for 8 years, and I have 20 years of experience in technology. So this is my profile. I am learning sales and marketing and business operation and administration, but I'm looking for a co-founder who can actually support me in this particular area, which
okay, Raj, the best thing to do, because we're running out of time here, join the club for free.
Yep.
I'll put your details out, what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to pay any money, and we'll try and find you one.
Great stuff. Thank you.
I think you're right to look for a co-founder. Solopreneurs, as I call them, don't have such success rate as Anthony showed within it. I think he pulled out his stats at the end of the day. They struggle, and having someone to bounce ideas off is, in my experience, really good. You've got one other advantage, which I almost think is these days, unfortunately, essential. You'd think angel investors and VCs in particular would mind a risk, but actually they're quite risk averse. But you're putting your own money in the game. You're putting some skin in the game. These days, if you're not putting about 20K of your own money in the game, angel investors and even VCs will go, well, why should I put my money in your game if you're not willing to put a bit of their money in the game? Yeah. And the fact you managed to pull a few friends and family, members of friends and families also suggests that this isn't, it's not just one individual who thinks this is a good idea. Others are willing to put their money on the line. Though surprisingly, friends and families give money more than a lot of angel investors, founders ever appreciate at the end of the day. As much because they're quite keen to see someone, a good friend, pull themselves up by their own boots, so to speak. And they'll always remember if they turn you down at the end of the day. So, but best of luck. Join the club.
Just getting contact.
Them. We will. There's also some other places for finding that manage the whole co-founder journey. But my view is actually go in more targeted than just turn up at one of these co-founder meetings. So yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dan. Yeah. Cheers, Dan, and cheers,
right. Mate. Hey, you're welcome. Everybody, look. Sorry, we're just about to run out of time. Thanks very much for everybody attending. As I say, please get in contact with either Anthony, myself, Dan, and Dan. As I say, we're here to help. That's what we do. please check out the exponential.club and get involved there. As I say, we're looking at a dedicated investor forum, investor universe, for want of a better word, and attend our events. We look forward to seeing you either virtually or physically, as we're now doing, and have a great day. Thank you very much indeed. Dan, much appreciated. I'll talk to you in the next day or so. Yeah, I've got a few things on this
afternoon. You guys can find me on LinkedIn if any of you want me. And my email.
Mario, thanks.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Thank you, guys.
Rav, I'll see you soon.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Take care.